Spring 1836. The roads are choked with mud and terror. Imagine this. You're a mother with 3 children clinging to your skirts. Your husband rode off weeks ago to join Sam Houston's army, and you haven't heard from him since. The only thing you own now is what you could throw into a wagon in 15 minutes. Behind you, somewhere in the gathering dusk, the Mexican army is coming. You don't know how close. You don't know if they'll burn your home or spare it. You only know one thing with absolute certainty. If they catch you, your children might not survive. This is March 1836. The Alamo has fallen. Goliad has fallen. And now, thousands of Texian settlers are running for their lives in what history will call the Runaway Scrape. It's the largest mass evacuation in American history up to that point. Entire communities abandoning everything they've built. Families scattered across hundreds of miles of wilderness. Children dying of exposure. Mothers giving birth on muddy roadsides. And through it all, one question burns in every mind. Will Sam Houston's army hold, or will Texas die before it's even born? This is the story nobody talks about when they remember the Texas Revolution. Not the heroic last stand, not the glorious victory, but the desperate, terrifying flight of an entire population fleeing annihilation. This was the Runaway Scrape. To understand the Runaway Scrape, we need to go back a few weeks to March 6, 1836. The Alamo falls after 13 days of siege. 189 defenders dead. Santa Anna orders their bodies burned like animals. No burial, no mercy. A message. News travels slowly on the Texas frontier. Some communities don't hear about the Alamo's fall for days, but when they do, panic spreads like wildfire. See, the Alamo wasn't just a military defeat. It was psychological devastation. These were the best fighters Texas had. Jim Bowie, William Travis, Davy Crockett. Legends, heroes, and Santa Anna crushed them. If the Alamo couldn't hold, what chance did anyone else have? Then, 3 weeks later, it gets worse. March 27th, 1836. Goliad. Colonel James Fannin and 342 Texian soldiers surrender to Mexican forces under General Urrea. They're promised they'll be treated as prisoners of war under international law. It's a lie. Palm Sunday morning. The prisoners are marched out of the fort in 3 columns. They think they're being relocated. Then the Mexican soldiers open fire. 342 men. Executed. Shot in the back. Bayoneted. Left in piles. Some try to run. Most are caught and killed. Only about 28 managed to escape into the brush. The survivors stagger into nearby settlements with stories of betrayal and slaughter. Word spreads. Fast. Santa Anna isn't taking prisoners. He's not following the rules of war. He's exterminating the rebellion, and his army of 6,000 professional soldiers is marching east, burning everything in its path. Now put yourself in the shoes of a Texas settler in late March 1836. You came to Texas for land, for opportunity, for a fresh start. Maybe you've been here 5 years, maybe 10. You've built a cabin, cleared fields, started a farm. Your children were born here. And now you're hearing that 2 major Texian forces have been wiped out. That the Mexican army's coming. That they're executing prisoners and burning settlements. What do? You run. The exodus begins in late March. Families in Gonzales, the town closest to the Alamo, are among the first to flee. They've already sent their men to reinforce the Alamo. Now they hear every one of those men is dead. The women pack what they can. Food. Blankets. A few precious possessions, They load wagons and start east toward the Sabine River and the safety of Louisiana. Other communities follow. Bastrop, Washington on the Brazos, San Felipe. One by one, entire towns empty out. It's not organized. There's no evacuation plan, no government coordination, just thousands of terrified people grabbing their children and running. And here's the thing that makes it worse. It's spring in Texas, which means rain. Roads, such as they are, turn into rivers of mud. Wagons sink to their axles. Families abandon furniture, tools, anything heavy, trying to lighten their loads. The trails become littered with the debris of shattered lives. The Colorado River is flooding. The Brazos River is flooding. Every creek and stream is swollen beyond its banks. Families wait for days trying to find a way across, watching the horizon for Mexican cavalry. Some people have wagons, some have horses. Many are on foot, carrying children and whatever supplies they can shoulder. And behind them, always behind them, is the smoke. Mexican forces burning abandoned settlements, the physical manifestation of their worst fears, getting closer every day. Now, where is Sam Houston during all this? Houston's retreating too. But he's retreating deliberately, keeping his small army between the Mexican forces and the civilian refugees. He's trying to buy time, waiting for the right moment to turn and fight. But his own soldiers don't understand the strategy. They think he's a coward. They want to fight. They want revenge for the Alamo and Goliad. Houston knows better. His army is outnumbered 3-1, poorly trained, barely equipped. If he fights too soon, he'll lose, and then there'll be nothing between Santa Ana and the defenseless civilians. So he retreats, and retreats, and retreats, and the people of Texas run. Let me tell you what the Runaway Scrape actually looked like on the ground, because the reality is worse than most people imagine. Susanna Dickinson, one of the few survivors of the Alamo, makes the journey with her infant daughter. Santa Ana actually releases her specifically so she can spread fear among the settlers. It works. She arrives in Gonzales on March 13th with news of the Alamo's fall. The town empties within hours. Most of the men are already dead at the Alamo. Now the women and children flee east. Dilu Rose Harris was 10 years old during the Runaway Scrape. Years later, she wrote about her family's flight. Her account is one of the most detailed we have. She describes roads so crowded with refugees that her family's wagon can barely move. She describes sleeping in the rain with no shelter. She describes watching other children die of measles and whooping cough, their bodies buried in shallow graves beside the road. Her family tries to cross the swollen Trinity River. The ferry is overwhelmed. Hundreds of families waiting, fighting for space. The ferrymen working day and night. They finally cross, but Diloué's mother is sick, possibly typhoid. They have no medicine, no doctor, just hope and forward momentum. At one point, Dilou's family encounters Mexican cavalry scouts. They hide in a thicket, holding the children silent, praying they won't be discovered. The soldiers pass. That night, Diloué hears wolves howling in the darkness. Her father sits up all night with a rifle, protecting the family from predators, human and animal. This is what the Runaway Scrape meant. Not a military retreat, not a strategic withdrawal, but the complete breakdown of society. Families reduced to survival mode, fleeing into the wilderness with their children. And it wasn't just Anglo settlers. Tejanos, Mexican Texans who supported independence, fled too. They knew Santa Ana viewed them as traitors. Their fate might be even worse than the Anglos. Juan Seguin, a Tejano captain fighting with Houston's army, had his family evacuate. His wife and children joined the streams of refugees, facing the same dangers, the same fear. The Runaway Scrape didn't discriminate. Terror was universal. Now, let's talk about what people left behind. Everything. Homes they'd built with their own hands, crops in the fields, livestock they couldn't drive, family heirlooms, letters, photographs, the accumulated possessions of years of hard work. Some people tried to hide valuables, burying them or stashing them in secret places, hoping they could return someday. Most never saw those possessions again. Mexican soldiers and opportunistic looters ransacked abandoned settlements. What they didn't steal, they burned. San Felipe de Austin, the de facto capital of Anglo-Texas, was burned to the ground, not by the Mexican army, by the Texians themselves. A scorched earth policy. If they couldn't have it, Santa Ana wouldn't either. The psychological impact was devastating. These people were watching their entire lives disappear. The community they'd built, the future they'd planned, all of it going up in smoke. Children were the most vulnerable. Infants died of exposure and disease. Mothers gave birth on the side of muddy roads with no medical care. Some babies didn't survive their first day. Older children got separated from their families in the chaos. Some were never reunited. Delu Rose Harris wrote about seeing a woman die in childbirth during the evacuation. The baby survived but had to be given to another family because the father was off fighting with Houston's army. The woman was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere along the road to Louisiana. How many stories like that were never written down? How many tragedies were lost to history? The weather was relentless. Cold rain, flooded rivers, mud everywhere. People were sleeping in the open or under hastily constructed lean-tos. Food was running short. Game was scarce because thousands of refugees were competing for the same resources. Disease spread through the refugee columns. Measles, typhoid, dysentery. With everyone weakened by exposure and stress, infections that might normally be survivable became fatal. There are no accurate numbers, but historians estimate dozens, possibly hundreds of people died during the Runaway Scrape. Most of them children and elderly. And through all of this, one question haunted everyone. Where is Sam Houston? When will he fight? Refugees would encounter Houston's retreating army and beg them to turn around, to protect them, to stop running. Houston's soldiers were frustrated too. They wanted to fight. They were Texans. They'd come here to defend their homes. Instead, they were retreating while Mexican forces burned those homes behind them. But Houston held firm. He was waiting, watching, looking for the right moment. He knew that if he lost the army, Texas was finished. The refugees would have no protection. Santa Ana would hunt them down like animals. So Houston played a dangerous game, retreating just fast enough to stay ahead of Santa Ana, but not so fast that the refugees were left exposed. By mid-April, the situation was desperate. Thousands of refugees had reached the Sabine River, the border between Texas and Louisiana. Some crossed into Louisiana, seeking safety in American territory. Others camped on the Texas side, unwilling to leave, hoping for news of a Texian victory. The camps along the Sabine were nightmares. Overcrowded, unsanitary, disease-ridden. People were dying daily. Meanwhile, Santa Ana made a critical mistake. Confident of victory, he divided his army. He took about 1,200 men and pushed ahead of his main force, chasing Houston's retreating army. Santa Ana wanted the glory of personally crushing the rebellion. He wanted to capture the Texian government, which was also fleeing. He wanted this finished. His arrogance would cost him everything. April 21st, 1836. San Jacinto. While thousands of refugees huddled at the Sabine River, while families prayed for deliverance, Sam Houston finally stopped retreating. He'd found his moment. Santa Ana's smaller force, caught between Buffalo Bayou and the San Jacinto River, trapped. At 4:30 p.m., Houston attacked. 18 minutes. That's how long the battle lasted. The Texian army, screaming, "Remember the Alamo! Remember Goliad!" crashed into the Mexican lines like a hurricane. Santa Anna's force shattered, complete annihilation. Over 600 Mexican soldiers dead, 730 captured, including Santa Anna himself, found hiding in the marsh the next day. Texas casualties, 9 dead, 30 wounded. When news of the victory reached the refugees at the Sabine, people wept, openly, collapsed in relief. Thank God. It was over. Texas had won. They could go home. But going home wasn't simple. When refugees made their way back to their settlements, many found nothing. Burned cabins, looted possessions, crops destroyed, livestock gone, years of work erased. Some families couldn't rebuild. They gave up and left Texas, went back east. The trauma was too much, but many stayed. They rebuilt, because that's what Texans do. The Runaway Scrape fundamentally shaped Texas identity in ways we still see today. It created a shared trauma, a collective memory of vulnerability, of being abandoned and left to fend for yourselves. It reinforced the Texas independence streak, the sense that you can't rely on anyone but yourself and your neighbors. That government protection is uncertain at best. And it deepened the resentment toward Mexico that would poison relations for generations. The Republic of Texas was born not just from military victory, but from the shared suffering of the Runaway Scrape. Every family that fled had a story. Every community had losses. That collective experience bonded Texians together in a way that peacetime settlement never could have. But here's some of them we don't talk about enough. The Runaway Scrape also revealed deep divisions in Texas society. Wealthier families with wagons and resources fared better than poor families on foot. Some communities helped each other. Others fractured under pressure. And the Tejano families who fled faced additional prejudice. Even though they supported Texas independence, they were sometimes viewed with suspicion by Anglo refugees. The trauma of the Runaway Scrape didn't erase ethnic tensions. In some ways, it made them worse. What about the people who died during the flight? The children buried in unmarked graves along muddy roads. The mothers who gave birth and bled out with no medical care. The elderly who couldn't keep up and were left behind. They're mostly forgotten. No monuments, no memorials, just scattered mentions in family letters and journals. The Runaway Scrape doesn't have the romantic glory of the Alamo. There's no heroic last stand, no memorable quotes, just suffering and survival. Maybe that's why we don't talk about it as much. But I'd argue the Runaway Scrape is just as important to understand in Texas as any battle, because it shows the cost, the real human cost of revolution and independence. It shows what ordinary people endured, what they were willing to sacrifice, what they lost that could never be recovered. Diddley Rose Harris, that 10-year-old girl who survived the Runaway Scrape, lived to be an old woman. She wrote her memoirs in the 1870s, describing her family's flight in vivid detail. She never forgot it. The fear, the exhaustion, the death she witnessed. But she also never forgot the resilience, the way communities came together, the way families protected each other, the way people kept moving forward, even when all seemed lost. That's the real legacy of the Runaway Scrape. Not defeat, not victimhood, but survival. Today, if you drive through East Texas, you can follow roughly the same routes the refugees took. Through Bastrop, across the Colorado, over the Brazos, toward the Sabine. Most of the road markers and historical signs focus on Houston's army, on the military campaign, on San Jacinto. But beneath that official history are thousands of personal stories. Families fleeing for their lives, children who didn't make it, possessions buried and never recovered, graves lost to time. That's the Texas that doesn't make it into the heroic narratives, but it's just as real, just as important. So why does the Runaway Scrape matter today? Because it reminds us that Texas wasn't born from glory alone. It was born from suffering, from sacrifice, from the determination of ordinary people to survive impossible circumstances. Every Texan today is in some way heir to that legacy. The independence, the resilience, the stubborn refusal to quit even when everything's falling apart. But we're also heirs to the trauma, the divisions, the unfinished business of who gets to be Texan and who gets remembered. The families who fled in 1836 were fighting for their vision of Texas, a place where they could build a future, where their children could thrive. Did they succeed? Depends on who you ask. Texas grew. Texas prospered. But not everyone benefited equally. Not everyone's story got told. The Runaway Scrape is a reminder that history is complicated, that there are no pure heroes, that survival sometimes comes at terrible cost, but it's also a reminder of human capacity for endurance. Those families kept moving. They buried their dead and kept moving. They lost everything and kept moving. And when it was over, when they could finally stop running, they turned around and rebuilt. That's the Texas spirit. Not the glory, not the bravado, but the quiet determination to keep going when any reasonable person would quit. So the next time you hear someone talk about the Texas Revolution, about San Jacinto and the Alamo, remember the Runaway Scrape. Remember the families fleeing through the rain, the children buried beside muddy roads, the mothers giving birth in the wilderness, the elderly left behind. Remember that Texas independence was bought not just with blood on the battlefield, but with the suffering of an entire population. And remember that those people, those ordinary, terrified, determined people, are the real heroes of Texas history. Thanks for watching Texas Tales, where we remember the past, understand the present, and celebrate the history of the Lone Star State. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment and let me know. What Texas history story should I tell next? There are so many more tales to tell. From the Comanche Empire to the oil boom. From forgotten heroes to famous battles. This is Texas Tales. Keep learning. Keep questioning. Keep exploring the incredible, complicated, fascinating history of Texas. Until next time, y'all, take care.